Hello, hello, and a wonderful day to you. I hope you're having an absolutely wonderful on-passing day. I am here to talk today about some pretty neat things. I hope you'll enjoy it because it's connecting economics, human consciousness, magnetics, and on-passive all together. So it'll be a nice little ride for us, I think. I'm going to start by opening the whole thing up by saying that um, the magnetics of our planet have been changing for a while. We've known that, especially since about the 1950s. But even back then, we could see the magnetic grid of the Earth through instrumentation, right? Scientists could. And since then, though, we seem to have seen something acting a little weird with magnetics and the way the Earth works on the interior. And to help explain this behavior a bit, we came up with the idea of the core, the Earth's core. And we're saying, that it's actually kind of isolated in a way from the rest of the planet, in that it moves differently from the way the rest of the planet moves. Everybody would think it's just one ball and it all moves together. Well, it really doesn't. Um, we're actually seeing how this is working with the newer technology. And since scientists started mapping the Earth's inner layers a long time ago, about 40 years ago, they were using detailed seismic activity records and such. Um, the inner core has rotated slightly faster than the mantle and the crust. Now, in a study published in June of this year in the journal Nature, researchers have found that since about 2010, the inner core has been slowing down and is now rotating a little more slower or more slowly than our planet's outer layers are. Uh, Perhaps we'll even see it slow to the point of a stop and a reversal. And this is actually kind of exciting. The whole thing points to the fact that the magnetics of our planet have shifted. And we're able to see that shift now over a period of a few years. And how many of us maybe remember the whales that were in the news a few years back? Well, when the whales of the planet started beaching themselves, it's because the magnetics of the planet had shifted. And when I say magnetics, I'm talking about where our north is, as pointed out on the compass. And when I say shifted, I'm actually talking about that north point has changed locations on the planet. Not that the North Pole, the geographic North Pole, has moved, but our magnetic North Pole has moved, right? And the whales made the news because they use their internal compass, as wildlife does in cases, to navigate so they could find places to go eat, places to breed, stuff like that. As a matter of fact, uh, the Earth's shifting magnetic poles also affect other wildlife too. The migratory ones, animals, birds, the sea turtles, fish, uh, they also use magnetics for navigation. That's why we've seen the wildlife behaving a little strangely in the past, because the Earth's magnetic pole has shifted significantly in the past 50 years, right? It's moved about 1,100 kilometers, which is about 680 miles in the 20th century. In other words, during the 1900s. And the rate of that movement has also accelerated, and it's gone from 6 or 8 miles per year in the past to about 60 miles per year between 21 and or excuse me, between 2001 and 2007. Now, currently, the magnetic pole is drifting, moving right towards Siberia, and it's doing that at the rate of about somewhere around 50 to 65 miles per year. Now, a practical way to confirm this is by looking at runway numbers, because runway numbers reflect compass bearings, and since the Earth's magnetic field is constantly changing, new bearings round off to a higher decadegree. That's how they're measured. And when that happens, the runways got to rename them so that they're in compliance with international aviation regulations. Now, uh, to that end, there have been a lot of recent instances of airport runway numbers changing because of the magnetic shifts. That would include 2009 Fairbanks International Airport in Alaska, uh, Stansted Airport near London, the Boeing Field, right? Those numbers have changed after more than 60 years of them staying the same. Oakland International Airport, they changed theirs. This was back in 2013. 2017, the McCarran International Airport renumbered one of its busiest runways from 25 to 26 because of the shift. 2019, Dwight D. Eisenhower National Airport in Wichita, Kansas, right? Renumbered 3 runways. Runway numbers all over the planet had to be repainted because the numbers are compass headings, and when the magnetics started to shift, they had to be done over. So anyway, so why am I telling you all this? Well, because magnetics and the Earth grids are somehow related to human consciousness. And I'm hoping to be able to bring all these things together. So we've talked about magnetics. We'll still talk a little more about that, but now we're getting into consciousness, right? I mean, that's a pretty bold statement, right? To say that magnetics is related to human consciousness 100 years ago, that would have been laughable. But somewhere around 2001, thereabouts, it was validated. Princeton University was involved in this. So was the HeartMath Institute, which was founded in 1991. And accordingly, it does seem as though consciousness alters the magnetics of our planet. It also appears that even randomness was changed by consciousness, which means that consciousness is energy. Of course, we all knew that, right? In other words, saying that randomness was changed by consciousness refers to the idea that consciousness or awareness can influence seemingly random events or processes. Now, for those that have heard me talk about this stuff before, that's where we get what we call synchronicities. Now, jumping back to magnetics for a bit, have you ever wondered how magnetic fields are created? Well, we need iron, obviously, or in very large, magnetic fields on a grand scale uses magma, like the Earth, right? It churns in the outer core of the Earth. You see, the Earth has got layers. At the center of the Earth, we've got a solid core. Around that core is what's called the outer core. That's made of liquid. It's a dense liquid, but it's liquid. Then you have the lower mantle, the upper mantle, and the crust, which is what we live on. And nowadays, the churning that's happening in the Earth's liquid outer core creates a dynamo, a generator, right, that creates the Earth's magnetic field. And this churning, which is through convection, right, it happens because of heat flow. And this is to say that there's electrically conductive molten iron alloy in the outer core layers, right? It gets hot. As it does, it rises, the heat dissipates, and it sinks again. Now, that's how you get the churning. The Earth's magnetic field is created by the movement of the molten iron in the Earth's outer core, which acts like a giant electrical generator where the swirling motion of the liquid metal generates electric currents that produce the magnetic field, similar to how a spinning wire in a motor creates electricity. This process is called, well, it's a geodynamo or geodynamic. Anyway, it's always happening because heat's escaping from the Earth's core. So that's why we have a magnetic field. Now, some planets have them, some don't. Ours does. Mars used to, not anymore. One of the things magnetic fields do is to protect us from cosmic radiation. There's a couple of them that are very important to us. Earth's magnetic field lines extend into space, right? They form this great big bubble that we call the magnetosphere. And the magnetosphere deflects most of the solar material that travels toward Earth at really high speeds, coming from stellar background or interstellar spaces. And without it, the Earth's atmosphere would be, man, it'd be stripped away. It'd be like sandblasting. I mean, it would just rip our atmosphere right away. Life would not be possible, period. So we got to have that magnetic shield up there in a way. Now, there's also what's called a heliosphere. It's another magnetic field that's always getting blasted at us, right, at the Earth. Some of us know it as what we call solar winds. Now, the heliosphere is another bubble-like region. It's huge. It surrounds the entire solar system. It's created by the constant stream of charged particles, solar wind, that's emitted by our sun. And that acts as a protective shield, deflecting most of the harmful cosmic radiation from interstellar space away from the Earth and the other planets that are inside our solar system. So these two huge magnetic fields protect us in a big, big way. As such, it protects us too, and it's not going to go away. So if you hear any other fear mongers out there, scientists saying, oh, we're losing our magnetics, wrong answer. It is not going away. It's just acting a little strange, right? But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, that's happening. Scientists are noticing it, but it's a good thing, because if the magnetic field of this planet is related to consciousness of humanity, the grid is going to shift in preparation for the new consciousness. And guess what we're seeing? Da-da-da-da. Absolutely. That's what's happening right now. Now, the indigenous peoples predicted this shift lots and lots and long time ago, right? It's been predicted all over the planet, saying there's going to be change. And indigenous people, when I use that term, I'm talking about the populations that are native to specific regions or countries, right? Meaning that they were living there long before colonization or the arrival of other dominant cultures. Essentially, they're the original inhabitants of any place, right? And right now, there is an immense, powerful change happening in the way we actually think. A change that's so great that the kinds of things that are happening right now on the planet, war in particular, will not be happening forever. And once it's gone, it'll never happen again. Now, warring is going to begin to go away, to diminish until they become conflicts and the conflicts dissipate entirely. And as a result, we're going to enter into an age of global peace. It's going to be the norm. So let me get back to why it's happening, right? This change of consciousness is a new kind of radiation. It's a new kind of light. It's coming into the planet, onto the planet. We're immersed in it, and it's replacing what has been a dark kind or a darker kind of consciousness, where human life isn't valued. War is extremely common. As a matter of fact, it's by design, and that's the kind of consciousness we're coming out of. The old consciousness wants to keep it the old way, right? And when I say old consciousness, I'm talking about the powers that want to dominate and control humanity largely through fear. And those powers, those powers that control the elite, if you will, the cabal or the deep state or whatever name you want to give to that, let me put it this way. Those are the powers that we refer to as powers and principalities of the air, that we refer to in scripture as well. And it's when new higher light, higher powers, raised consciousness, higher frequencies, however you want to put it, starts to come in, that those invested in the dark are going to go the extra mile and way beyond to try to squelch us, to try to push us back down, to keep our consciousness the same at a lower level. And it has to do with control, right? It has to do with the way things were. That's not how they're going to be. And those that live in the darkness, so to speak, do bad things to good people in an attempt to control outcomes, because ultimately it's all about that control. But generally, it has to do with huge or vast amounts of money, money, money. That's why war exists, and I'm sure you know that. And what we're seeing there, at least now, it could have had it, no, had things not taken this turn with the higher consciousness and the magnetics and all of this, that could have become World War III. I almost got my hands flustered and almost hit my cup. Instead, what we're going to be seeing, right, is the last of wars. And this is because recently, despite what we might see going on right now in the Middle East, humanity is coming together and they're saying, no more. We're not doing this again. Of course, what we're seeing in the Middle East has been predicted by by the ancients, even in scripture, in the Bible. It says in the beginning of the end times that these times are going to be marked by a war in Israel. Now, some are frightened by that, and absolutely rightfully so. It's a horrid thing to happen. Some are saying, "Hey, it's right on time, and it's an end times marker in an objective sense." And I agree. We are in end times. It's the end of an old world anyway, and we've entered the end of times of a war. Oh, excuse me. We've entered the end of times in a world where those controlling it don't necessarily care about each other at all. They've got one thing, and it's me on their mind, right? The end of a world of dark energy where people are starving, people go hungry. We're ending a world where wealth and abundance are hoarded, they're not shared, and benevolent behavior is rarely seen in a real sense. But that paradigm is shifting. We're becoming a planet where benevolence is going to be the rule of the day, where connectedness and benefit for the greater good are the norm. We're starting to see technology that we've always had, been there in the background, right? It's going to be coming to light, and a lot of things that have been withheld or hidden from us are going to become available. And some of that has to do with the technologies that provide, free electricity for everybody, the ending the world water crisis, all sorts of things like that. And these new energies, which will have a wide and varied impact on life for us, make everything so much better, they're not going to impact negatively the planet. They're not going to have they're going to have a good effect on the planet, and it's going to be good for everybody, and it's not going to be bad. It's going to be good stuff. Now, all of this stuff is just tips of the iceberg, in a sense. The electrical, water, that there are many, many things already in the works, and these things are already starting to happen. Some of them are happening now. They're here. They're gaining momentum. Meanwhile, there's still a great many powers, right? People that are under very negative influences that go way up that want to take that light away from us. They don't want us to share. They don't want us to do good and go for the greater good. That's exactly what happened with Onpassive over the last year, where those in power, far above us, have orchestrated corruption in various ways to dismantle the process of goodness, if you will, and diminish the light again and to push it down, right? But everything they're trying, all the chaos you see in the war and stuff like that, is a last-ditch attempt by those darker powers to rein in the control, try to stop or halt or otherwise halt their demise. They're on the way out. It's too late for them, right? But we're in this shift. We're too far into the shift for it to stop now. It's to borrow a phrase from Onpassive, it's a done deal. So I said all that so I can ask you, how are we moving forward, right? I mean, well, about the turn of the century, all these things really kicked into gear, right? About 25 years ago. And lots of things are happening, but there were some of the milestones that included, like, just before the turn of the century in 1995, you had a Nobel Peace Prize winner. His name was Muhammad Yunus. He was the founder of the Grameen Bank. He called his bank a socially conscious capitalist enterprise. That's never seen before. Of course, we said earlier the relationship between consciousness and magnetics was validated about 2001. So we see it start to surface right there in that one statement. Shortly after the turn of the century, somewhere around 2000, 6 or 7. John Mackey founded the Conscious Capitalism Alliance, and it was to promote the idea that businesses should have a purpose beyond profit and focus on aligning all the stakeholders in the companies. A few years later, Patricia Aberdeen published Megatrends 2010, and that was the rise of conscious capitalism. Wow. I mean, now we're really starting to get into it and we're starting to see the reflection of what I was talking about earlier with consciousness and magnetics and the whole thing, the raised vibrations. We're starting to see it in economics. In 2013, a Harvard Business Review article found that companies that practice conscious capitalism perform 10 times better than their peers. And of course, along came, 2019 and such, and 2020, and along came the pandemic, accelerated the rise of conscious business, right? So, I mean, that was one good thing that came out of the virus as people questioned their work and they felt an almost communal responsibility to do the right thing. So there's a clear shift in economics toward a conscious business model that's closely tied to the rise in human consciousness, and that's also affecting the magnetics, right? At least on a grand scale. The shift is characterized by businesses prioritizing ethical practices, sustainability, and social responsibility alongside profitability. Now, there's some key aspects of this thing, right? Now, inside the conscious business model, you've got a higher purpose, which means businesses operate with a mission that goes beyond profit, aiming to have a positive impact on society and the environment, on the planet. We've heard Mr. Mufareh talk about that. Stakeholder orientation, where companies consider the interests of everybody involved, employees, customers, suppliers, the community, right? We've talked about that in Onpassive. Conscious leadership, where leaders are aware of their impact on others. They lead with empathy, integrity, and long-term vision. We've heard that. We've seen that in Onpassive. Conscious culture. This is where the organizations foster a culture that promotes trust, transparency, collaboration. Bam! I mean, we're trampling all over Onpassive with these things. Absolutely. Now, when we talk about the rise in human consciousness, right, there's increased awareness where people are becoming more aware of global issues like climate change and social inequality, ethical consumption, those sorts of things. We also have personal fulfillment, where individuals are seeking work that aligns with their values and provides a sense of purpose and fulfillment. There's collaboration and community, which and when we talk about collaboration and community, we're talking about the growing emphasis on collaborating, on building bonds and connectedness within community and supporting each other's well-being. I mean, you can see all this. You can see it in Onpassive. You can see all of these things in Onpassive, right? And when you think about economics, what we have are sustainable practices. And these practices mean that businesses are adopting sustainable practices to reduce the environmental footprint and promote long-term viability of the business. We want sustainability, key word, right? We also talk about ethical consumption within the economics, where consumers are more and more choosing products and services from companies that align with their values. And we talked about stuff like that before with some of my things in Onpassive. And then again, with economics, we have that transformation, economic transformation in particular, where the conscious business model is driving a transformation in economic systems, and it's emphasizing the well-being of people and the planet, right, over short-term profits. And this shift, everything we're talking about, reflects a broader movement towards integration of personal values and social consciousness into business practices. Ultimately, it's bringing us into a more sustainable and equitable economy. which is like bada boom. I mean, that is Onpassive all over the place. There are some other companies, but we're talking about Onpassive, and all of this is in Onpassive. And the conscious business model is transforming the economic landscape as human consciousness evolves. Now, with this, there are some key drivers. Number one, growing awareness of social and environmental issues. Number two, shifts from maximizing profit to purpose-driven business. So we're getting away from the products and the profit and going to purpose-driven with an eye toward everybody's happy. You know what I mean? And the third thing is increasing demand for transparency, accountability, sustainability. And these are seen in each area. These three key things I just talked about, they're seen in the conscious business model where you've got a triple bottom line, right, approach, which is people, planet, and profit. We have stakeholder engagement where the employees are and customers and the community and the planet or the environment all matter and are all considered. And we have social and environmental responsibility that are integrated into the operations. And we've talked specifically about Onpassive. We know we're not about profit. We're about people. And we know that we're taking everybody. We've talked about taking all these, the environment and everything into account. And we've also talked about how we put, you know, with the AI with heart and all of that, how we've put this consciousness into the operating philosophy of Onpassive. Now, in the rise of human consciousness, what we're seeing is spiritual spiritual awakening, mindfulness. We talked about mindfulness, you know, being present in the moment. There's number two, recognition of interconnectedness and a oneness, right? We're not separate, we're all connected. And number three, there's a desire for meaningful work and purpose-driven living. Okay, it's not just a drudgery of a 9 to 5 anymore. There's purpose behind what we do, and it's got to do with the greater good. Now, what are the economic implications of all of this? Well, we're going to be shifting from scarcity to the abundance mindset, right? We redefine success by going beyond all the stuff having to do with profit, you know, like GDP and stuff like that. And we're going into doing what's right for the right reasons. And we're being governed by that as opposed to how much is in it for me kind of a thing. And there's also going to be an emergence of new economic indicators, right? Think about when we started going green, and then they started being some green indicators out there, you know, about, oh, well, is this a green company, you know, that sort of thing. There might be a genuine progress indicator. You probably Google that, things like that. But there's going to be new indicators of the economic shift. So we got challenges and opportunities to be sure, but I believe Onpassive has these under control already, and they could be, you know, how do you integrate consciousness into business decision making? I think Ash has done that rather well. Balancing profit with social and environmental goals. Again, we're all about that. Developing conscious leadership, employee engagement. Yeah, they got that nicked. I mean, man, you know, but in the future, what we're going to be looking at, we're going to find a post-scarcity economics, if you will, and resource-based economies. Can you imagine? Post-scarcity economics. In other words, there is no more scarcity. Everything's being shared. There's more than enough to go around. And now there's an economic system based on that. That's cool, right? There's also increased focus on well-being and happiness, global cooperation, collective prosperity, all of these things. And all of these things are something that Onpassive stands for, and Onpassive is working towards and has been working towards for quite a while. The shift in consciousness, right, especially in the business models, reflects humanity's growing awareness of our interconnectedness and our responsibility to create a better world. So everything that we've talked about, when we see the magnetics in the world changing, the magnetic field, That's a result of a changing consciousness, and the changing consciousness is the result of the higher light coming in, and our changing consciousness is bringing about a change in global economics that says we're all about doing what's right because it's right. We're doing it with transparency. We're doing it for the greater good, and we're doing it because it's a good thing to do, and we're getting away from all the bad stuff, and we're basing our business and our decisions not on profit, but on people and what's good for people. So that's where we're at. That's where we are now. The whole world is going that way. Onpassive is in that. We will be rising up shortly, rather soon, as it's as it's relevant. I mean, if you think about relativity, right? When I say soon, I don't mean it's going to be in a few weeks, might not even be a few months, but we're on the way out, and we will be able to track progress or our trajectory to that effect. So keep an eye on us, get involved, do what you can, operate out of your heart, and I hope you have an awesome, awesome Onpassive day. Thank you.